Hello and welcome to the Agenda on Politics Social. I'm joined, as always, by Phil Moorhouse. How you doing up there, Phil?
Hello,
You
I'm all
mate?
right, thank you.
Yeah? How's it going over on your channel at the moment? Is it...
Um,
You've over 200,000 subscribers now, aren't you?
yes. Yeah, it's all still a bit weird though. Obviously, it's still like reduced. It went a bit crazy when Elon Musk decided to shoot his mouth off, but it's going back down again now. But never mind.
He's a gobshite. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about Labour today, and there was that quite distressing poll, and I know it was just one poll, but it showed Refucker 1% behind Labour.
I mean, it could well be. All I would say is if you want some solace, the online pollsters, not YouGov, it's actually their first poll for ages. They haven't done a poll. They didn't even do a voting intention poll just before the election. So we have no idea how that would have stacked up. So we don't know what their accuracy is like. But, the previous two general elections, they were spot on.
Yeah.
And, so they're a decent one. But all of the online pollsters always amplify Reform UK. So I'm waiting for an Ipsos Mori to come out. But there is no doubt that Reform UK will be much higher in the polls than they were at the election, because it's like the summer of 2019. If you recall, then in the polls, the Lib Dems and the Brexit parties they were then were in first and second place.
Yeah.
And Labour and Conservatives were in third and fourth place. It was completely mental. And it was because, and the same things happen now, the people just saw, at the time, it was because Theresa May couldn't get her Brexit deal through. So the Conservatives looked all at sea. And people weren't really convinced Labour were offering an alternative, or not one they liked. So the Brexit party, so people just naturally, according to their leanings, congregated towards either the Lib Dems or the Brexit party.
Yeah.
The same thing's happening now. You've got the Conservatives have completely shit the bed, and Labour have, people are going, oh, we'll promise change, but there's no change, everything's the same. It's the budget hasn't even been implemented yet, and the legislation's still going through.
I get that, but we're getting a lot of criticism, in the chat, but Labour are getting criticism in general because people feel like they're going after transgender people and disabled people. Is there some grander plan here that they're just not telling us about? Because this is the way it's coming across.
Well, there's always a grander plan they're not telling us about. But in terms of that, I mean, so in terms of the transgender thing, I get it from the trans community thing. I don't even try and defend it. But ultimately, Labour are improving some things. But the damage Wes Streeting has done with his cash review position, which is not even Cassa's position, which is bizarre.
Yes. He's
taken
this flawed review and somehow made it even more flawed, which is how did he?
But anyway, that has obviously done a lot of damage, and because Labour are not coming out, even Wes Streeting's follow up, he actually said he understands the upset this has caused, and he says, but don't worry, I'm on your side. It's okay, so give us an example then of how this is just an isolated case and you're going to make life better for these people. And it's we're waiting. So I could argue, when people, particularly trans people, will try and say Labour are against them. I could say, but they're doing this and this and this.
But what are they doing? What are they doing that you could say as a positive for trans people? Because
there are things in the manifesto, and they're still going ahead with that. They're not back that things self-identification, stuff like that. So, but the bottom line is there is at the moment, and there has been over the last few years, a concerted attack by particularly the very right wing on trans people because they can't attack gay people anymore.
Yes.
They can't attack gay people anymore. And so this occupies that new niche, because trans people have been around for pissing thousands of years. No one, trans people may have been ridiculed in the past, so you'd still say there was work to be done, but they weren't attacked this savagely in the past. And what they're observing is, first of all, in terms of what Labour have actually done in the trans arena, is very bad and is going to harm a lot of trans people.
Yeah.
And secondly, they're not hearing them sticking up for them.
Yes. Yeah.
But
you're right.
It would be ridiculous to suggest that that is moving the needle at all in the polling. Like, it's really bad for people living that life. But this is why I thought Labour's shift in the transposition, because it was fine 2 years ago. This is why their shift in it a year and a half ago was so maddening, because it was such low saliency. Just like
yes, but they're actually taking time in Parliament, Phil, to talk about this when I would say there's more pressing matters than stopping teenage kids from getting puberty blockers if they support the wrong football team or whatever the rule is.
And this is the problem. They think, I don't know, I don't get involved in the meetings. I really don't know. Lots of people jump to conclusions, but it's not affecting the polling now at all. It never could, which is why it makes it all the more ridiculous.
Yes,
that they're not able to just
even
stick
if
up
it
with people.
Did affect the polling and gave them a bit of a bump. It's the wrong thing to do. Like, it's not. Like,
well, it can't. That's the problem. It can't possibly give them a bump. It can't give the Tories a bump.
Yeah,
because no one. You can get people riled up about toilets, right? But you can't. This is actually, I was making this comment to someone the other day. I think because like you get it in gaming, you do get transphobes in gaming. They're not widespread, but you do get them, and they think they can shoot their mouths off. And you're thinking you're like a bloke and you're playing a female character. Like, we're all trans in games, and I think maybe it's not such a big problem there because there's no toilets.
I think that's a manufactured issue. It's not something that anyone really thought about 10 years ago.
No, of course it's not.
Some bright spark and from some right-wing advertising agency stroke think tank went, toilets! People will be in toilets and they feel vulnerable in toilets, especially public toilets.
Well, you do. I feel vulnerable in toilets. I don't like going to toilets.
I went to the loo last night when I went to the cinema. I went into the toilet. This guy's having a piss. And as I walked in, he turned around and looked at me and went,
right.
And that freaked me the fuck out. I'm like, why are you looking at me? Like, what? Did you expect me to be someone else? What? Why? What? And then I had to go on the other side of the... Luckily, I didn't have to piss on the same side as him. But, toilets. Jesus Christ. I'm laughing because I'm just... otherwise I cry.
So, it has. It's just... I don't know. But, it is ridiculous because the people who are trans... Obviously, this position is put, or people who know people who are trans are close to them. This isn't the right thing for Labour to do, even strategically.
Yes.
And
it makes
for people
no moral
who are,
sense, no strategic sense, no sense in polls.
No, because the people who believe all this stuff about toilets, right? They're not going to base their vote on it.
No.
Where someone living that life might.
Yes.
Now, it's not enough people to shift the dial, but at the same time, it seems a madness to me. No one goes into a polling booth and votes to make sure that you don't get transgender toilets. Do you know another thing on transgender toilets that's come up this week? The Conservatives were having a pop at the government about transgender toilets in the Home Office. And it's like, who put them there? Yvette Cooper
transgender toilets or just unisex toilets?
Unisex. Sorry, I meant unisex toilets. Ones that that's actually what I meant. Just toilets. Toilets. So it doesn't matter what sex you are. Like the ones they had in Google when I went to London. That's a much better system. And you can't complain. The door is floor to ceiling. There's no looking under or over. It's all there. But everyone just goes into the same one. You go into a cubicle, you come out, you wash your hands, off you go.
But isn't like discriminating against an entire minority for the perceived crimes that a minority of that minority might in some way commit is the maddest thing.
But they can't
ever.
Anyway.
I mean,
but it's mad anyway because they can't. What crime? What crime do they think they can commit? Look under someone's toilet. No one's going to do that. Yeah. Like, you could do that. Like, if I wanted to go into a woman's toilet, I'll just walk into a woman's toilet. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to.
You're not going to go through like a whole of
women go into men's toilets all the
many
time.
Years. Take some estrogen, go through some surgery, so you can go into the women's toilet. So you just got to go in.
No, you could just go in. Like, there's nothing to stop you. Like, someone might call security or something, maybe if there's any security there, but nothing will stop you going in. Mm-hmm. But the point is, like, women go into men's toilets all the time because women's toilets get full.
Yeah, because of architectural sexism.
Yeah.
Yep.
which was baked in Victorian times. It was deliberately set up that way because they didn't want women to be out of the house for very long. So they said, right, we'll let you out just long enough so you need a
How
piss, you
does
have to
that
go home
explain
again.
the new Wembley Stadium when I went to see Blair and the queue for the women's toilets was round the whole stadium, but this
Because they
queue
don't want
for
to
the
put
blokes
toilets in.
didn't exist. It wasn't a queue for the
It's
blokes.
because like same with car parks. They don't want to use space for things that aren't you don't charge for the toilet, so it's wasted space to them, so make it as small as possible. Whereas
That's why parking
women, you
spaces
have
are
to
so
have
small
cubicles.
these
Yeah, you have
days.
to have cubicles for women, whereas men are encouraged just to piss on the floor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So when you're all just pissing on the floor, you don't need as much space.
yeah. Lee Corn is saying there's likely to be a drug dealing stroke taking in pub. Drug dealing stroke taking in pub or club toilet cubicles. Oh, is this from personal experience, is it, Lee? Oh, aye. Where you been hanging out? The fact is, I mean, that's got to go on anyway, and actually having a unisex toilet might make it a little bit less likely that people do it for various
Yeah.
reasons, But Frank says toilets should be unisex. It's crazy they are not. Yeah, it's absolutely
It is.
nuts that if you are a bloke and you are busting to wee, you can generally find somewhere to piss. If you're a woman, you generally have to wait in a queue. And if you're a transgender woman, you can't go anywhere because
I'll tell you something.
J.K. Rowling.
If it weren't for the case that the Victorians deliberately tried to reduce the facility for women to have a piss outside the home, we would have unisex toilets. Toilets are unisex. Vast majority of toilets are unisex. The toilet in your home is unisex. You'll use it.
Yep.
So toilets are unisex anyway.
Yeah. A little bit frustrating, but I mean, from your point of view, you think that some of this criticism of Labour is pretty valid at the moment. The
criticism is nothing to do. Like the criticism of Labour has got nothing to do with their trans issues. It's got absolutely zero to do with what they may or may not do with disabled people, which they haven't announced yet, or anything like that. It's none of those things. It's entirely to do with the winter. First of all, their inability to take the media on. Now, you need to either
you're talking about the criticism in the media and people and the polling and everything else. You're not talking about anything us, because we're quite pissed off on this channel about.
Yeah, they don't care about us. Anything that impacts the polling is what matters to them, and it's got nothing to do with these things. It's entirely about their inability to control the media narrative. And there's two ways to do it. You can either engage with the crap they want to talk about and win, or you can just they're the government. They can just announce things all the time. And I was saying earlier this week, I think you have this phrase, a dead cat.
Yeah.
And it's like, Keir Starmer says he's not into performative politics and stuff like that. Well, that's grand. But performative politics works. You are supposed to use it to distract the media. At the end of the day, the media, although they have an agenda to push, what they chiefly want is clicks. It's very competitive. Feed them stuff.
Yeah.
Feed them stuff to talk about, and they'll talk about it because their overriding priority is getting people to read their stuff. And they're just not doing that.
Yeah.
And they could do, but they just can't be asked.
But it's I mean, we can talk about Labour comms till the cows come home, but these to me are very clear mistakes that Labour's making early on in its tenure. And we've seen how much the media just jump on anything, any misstep that they, or anything, any misplaced word even.
Well, yeah, we've had.
And I was just going to say, when do Labour have a crisis meeting about this and sort of acknowledge the fact that they're not doing so well in the public imagination, the public
they already have, and we know they have. They just didn't make the right move. We know they had. That's why Sue Gray's no longer Starmer's chief of staff, because they had such a meeting, and he went, and he put McSweeney in charge instead. And I said at the time, I don't know behind the scenes. I don't know whether Sue Gray, as it turned out, was turned out to be a good chief of staff or not. What I do know is that things I kept hearing little things like people in the Downing Street team going, "Oh yeah, things are much better now with McSweeney there." And it's like, no, they're not. What
Yeah.
you mean is you didn't like Sue Gray because she rubbed you up the wrong way because she might as well have been from Yorkshire because she was quite blunt with you, and um,
Are you
and
quite
that's
blunt,
what
are
you
you,
didn't
down
like,
there in Yorkshire?
huh?
Down there in Yorkshire. Well, you're
Quite
down
odd
for
to be
me.
called down. I am down as from you, I suppose. Yeah,
Yeah, you are.
but yeah,
Hey, I'm down from the Scottish people, and they're down from
yeah,
the Highlanders. So
from the polar bears.
they're all Sassenachs. We're all Sassenachs down here. But yeah, oh, we just got a €20 super chat in. Thank you very much from Art from Hell for the first super chat of the show. I want to know who made trans such a big issue again. It was whipped up in the US. About 1 in 5,000 are born with both sets of genitals. I can see where the rainbow comes from. Thanks very much, Art from Hell. Well, Phil alluded to it earlier. Essentially, the right wing, the billionaires, the think tanks, the oil oligarchs, they realized they'd lost the war on stopping gay people from existing, being legal, having relationships, not dying
Well,
of
some
AIDS,
of them are gay.
and
That's the other thing.
not
Some
being
of
able
them.
to get married. So once they lost gay marriage in America, I think it was 2013, was it 2014, when gay marriage across America was legalized,
About the same time as here.
yeah, and then they were like, okay, what can we move on to now? So they picked a minority. They picked on trans people, and they went, okay, what's the problem with trans people? And they decided that the problem will be that they use the same toilet. Well, with trans women, because trans men are just ignored by these
Yeah.
trans obsessives. That trans women are using the wrong loos because they should use the men's, I guess, which puts their safety in danger.
Well, according to their own thinking, yeah. But it is literally, I mean, what they have to do is they have to distract from the fact that the source of people's ills is very rich people wanting to be even richer for no apparent reason, because their standard of living stays the same, because obviously they're really rich. So they have to create little enemies within society that are actually your fault. It's like you put up that cartoon, didn't you, of the hillbillies, or the white trash, as you would call it these days, who were saying now that trans people can't use the toilets, eggs will be cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what you have to do. You have to get people to think that the cause of their problems is some minority that can be easily attacked.
Sfax has got a question. Phil, and this is going back a while, so, Phil, were attacks on Labour by the media on the same scale during Blair's regime?
Yes, but Blair and his team, which included Alistair Campbell and Peter Mandelson, were really good at dealing with it. They had a very good media operation. I will also just say, though, just in fairness, at the time, we didn't have this real 24/7 news cycle, and like with social media wasn't really a thing. So it is very different now, and you have to be much quick. So you had more time to work on your strategy.
Yeah.
But even weeks later, Labour are still getting it wrong. So yeah, they were much sharper. And the thing is as well, Labour's team doesn't actually take it. They actually deliberately don't take it seriously. We keep hearing phrases like Starmer pays no attention to the media because he just considers it noise. And it's like, okay, that's fine. And it's good, because, what we don't want are prime ministers who hang on every headline and go, oh, no, that's terrible, I need to do something different. But at the same time, you have to be aware of the effect on the public. So you don't have to care what journalists are saying as such. You do have to care what the public are hearing. Yeah. And one thing that Labour have now, and I'm going to keep going on about it, Labour have now that they had no access to before, is they have the ability to get their message through to the public. I'm just going to find something, because Nigel Farage was ripping the piss out of Kemi Badenoch this week, and he was quite right in what he said, because Nigel Farage,
I don't like agreeing with Farage.
Well, but he is the only one who is taking social media seriously. The only one. In fact, Rob Ford, I'm going to do a video based on this at some point, he was saying that there's a lot of people thinking that Reform UK are appealing to young people and they're radicalising young people. Yeah. And Rob Ford was saying, no, if you look at statistics, the number of young people who are right-wing or would have far right in particular have that sort of appeal is the same. It hasn't gone up at all. He says what's changed is that they're being engaged now because Reform UK are very good at sort of engaging them via social media. And that's a real wake-up call, because what he's basically saying is, although there aren't more young people who are attracted to the far right, they're going to be mobilized in elections because they are now being organized. No one is organizing young progressive people. None of them.
Yeah.
Not Labour, not the Lib Dems, not the Green Party, not the SNP. None of them have an A game on social media. Nigel Farage does, though.
Yeah. I'm writing this down. Engaging social media. I just want to say as well, hello to everyone in the chat. We've got Lee Corn in there, we've got Gallifreyan Men, One Angry Pagan, Plum Duff and us. Plum's asking who got your membership. It was Andrew Dixon who got your membership, I think. So thanks to Andrew there. Your name will appear at the end of the show. I think it always did. Plum Duff, I think your name just was on there anyway, because you've been such a supporter of the channel over the years. If you would like to join everyone in the chat, all you need to do is hit that subscribe button under the video and wait for about 30 seconds. You'll be able to join in the chat. Please do. We're a very friendly bunch. No trolling though. But if you would like to become a member, that would mean that you get your name at the end of the show. Not this one, because I don't have time to set it up. But and you also get a star next to your name on the chat there, which is really cool. And then there's progressive orders of magnitude of much money you can give, which give you even better benefits. So yeah, just do that. If you fancy joining it, just press the join button under it if you can see it. Ian says, I'm on benefits, I can't work. Trust me, they're being awful to people with mental health issues, childcare issues, and disability difficulties. Cons, believe it or not, we're better. That's what Ian's saying in the chat. Which,
in what way? Because they haven't done anything yet. All Labour have done so far is to there was a plan by the Conservatives to cut back even further that last autumn, and Labour shelved it.
Yeah. But
so I'm honestly interested. Like, if you've lived that life and you're saying something has got worse, then tell me. But what I've seen in terms of parliamentary action or government action, ministerial action, is they've blocked a plan by the Conservatives to cut back the budget. And they're going to announce what they're going to do instead in a few months' time, which may not be good. And I am also going to say, I mean, unfortunately, this is the political reality of it, and I've lived on benefits, is a lot of people, there's two things that a lot of people resent. One is money spent on immigration, and the other is money spent on benefits, whether in work or not.
Yeah.
And again, because you can't tell people, well, the reason for that is because rich people are hoarding all the money and not paying people.
Why can't you tell people that, Phil? Because that's
you can tell people that, they won't believe it. Because because a lot of the people who would like to say it are clearly not credible in other ways, because they are extremists. And other more normal people, it's like, you'll say this, but they'll point to you like 10 different media outlets that say something else.
Okay.
And those 10 different media outlets aren't, of course, owned by the same 3 billionaires.
One of the things I think that Labour really fucked up on was that they didn't hit the ground running. And we talked about this last summer when they won the election. The fact that they took a summer holiday and then they had recess for the conventions. Like, honestly, conferences, sorry. We should have had them hit the ground running. £22 billion black hole needs to be filled. Government from day one. But they did government for a couple of weeks and then they seemed to go on holiday, whether they did or not. Well, that's the way it came across to a lot of voters.
It wouldn't have helped.
Desperate to see some change. And we waited for what? 4 months? Was it 4 months before we got the budget?
Yeah, but that wouldn't have changed, because you needed those 4 months to do it anyway. Because remember, when you have a summer recess, that's just Parliament in recess, not the government. Obviously, ministers can take a holiday, but remember, Keir Starmer didn't, because you had the summer riots. That would have happened anyway. And in fact, if you'd have had Parliament in session, you would have just had Nigel Farage stoking more, because he couldn't have been sued for anything he said in Parliament. So no, it would have made absolutely zero difference. In the air. I mean, they did actually delay it a little bit to get some legislation started. The legislation they're putting through Parliament, it's going to take ages. If they'd have had an extra couple of weeks over summer, it still is not going to get passed before this coming summer.
We've got Admiral Awesome, who's just dropped in a super chat. Thank you very much for that. Saying sanctions have gotten worse. I don't think he's talking about the sanctions.
But in what way?
Russia.
Because nothing has changed. I know what you mean in terms of, but literally nothing. There's been no directives changed at all.
So
So
this was something that
that's
the
what I don't
Tories
get.
brought in. Are they implementing it more than they used to?
No.
Or
So I don't know. Again, I'm not going to try and tell someone who's living this life that they're wrong. But is it just a case of you have been sanctioned or someone has been sanctioned? So in other words, the sanction regime hasn't gone away, which it should do. But Labour haven't actually changed anything.
are they going to
There's
get rid of the
nothing.
sanction system because
They
it's not
should
fit
do.
for
They said
purpose?
they would. They
They've
said
said,
they
have
would.
they said that in their manifesto?
Let me check the manifesto because I know they said it during the election campaign. I think there was. Again, you have to be a bit careful about cunningness of words because, like, for example, going back to the cash review thing, I saw when I read the manifesto on the cash review and it said something like to implement the evidence, something to do with the cash review, where the wording, I looked at it and go, that doesn't actually commit them to implement it in the cash review. And then he went and implemented stuff that wasn't even in the cash review. It's really weird. But let me have a look in the manifesto.
Slightly infuriating for most people watching.
But
I'm sure.
you know, but he is. That's what he's like.
Everyone's
isn't he?
being moved to universal credit, says Band of Heart Jays. That's been a process that's been
That
ongoing for
again,
over
yeah,
10
that's been
years.
going on for years. That's not a change.
But is that something that Labour can do something about now? Is it just to dive in the system?
At some point, I mean, obviously, Liz Kendall has been given a budget. Oh dear, I don't know how to look it up because I don't know what phrase. Because the word sanction hasn't appeared in there. So.
Unquiet Badger is saying, Phil, do you have some inside information? Because from what I've heard, the future of benefits doesn't look good.
No, my point I'm saying is no one has inside information other than those ministers. They haven't. My beef with them is so they haven't announced anything. Now, what I would say is, so at the moment, Liz Kendall is, and she's still working on it, so even she doesn't know what she's doing. Not in terms of like she's incompetent, she may be, I don't know. But what I mean is she doesn't actually know what she's going to announce yet. And she couldn't do anything until she was given her budget by Rachel Reeves. And she got that pretty much at the same time as everyone else. So she's now having to work on what she does with that money. Now, so you've got this process going on and no one knows what they're actually going to be able to say about it. What they should have done though is because what they will be doing, like anyone who has to work on something, there'll be parameters. So there will be parameters that they're working with. There will be things that are off the table and that there will be other things that are going to stay on the table that think, well, we definitely want to do this. And there'll be things that we definitely, and they haven't said what those things are. That's my gripe with them. They haven't said what their anchors are, if you like. So every process, every project has certain anchors. There's certain no-go areas and there's certain, we definitely need to be in this area. And they haven't said what that is. So that is obviously generating a lot of, and it's not fair when you're talking about people like the difference between Labour getting this right and getting it wrong is not like a business going, oh, that's going to hit our profit margins. You're talking about the difference between someone being able to cope and not, and getting themselves into crippling debt or developing long-term health issues or something like that.
We've got in the chat here, mate, we've got 8-day sanction, £100 for being 50 minutes late, says Billy, which I just
but that's already been the case.
Set up the system so public transport is expensive and shit and never on time, and then say the poorest people in society have to use this and have no choice because they can't afford a car. It's just, and then
but that is the system that was already in. I mean, I've thankfully, when I was on benefits, it was not during the Conservatives' time in power, and it was bad enough then. But I still know now people who are on it, and
I just think it's disgraceful.
Sure.
And Billy's saying it's disproportionate. It absolutely is. Admiral, awesome. Thank you very much for the £2 super chat there, mate. More people are getting longer sanctions. Yeah, absolutely. And also, I just want to say a big thank you to Jane Lockwood, who's just upped her membership with us. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to give you a welcome new members because I made the animation, so you may as well see it. That's for you. So thank you for upping your level of membership. Could get some nice little gifts for you, or gifts, like not gifts as in a present, but a gif, like a little animated thing, and me put my thumbs up. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, Phil. So Phil, one of the questions we've got here from Anthony Fisher says, Phil, is there anything change? Are there any changes to PIP coming up here?
There will be, but I honestly I cannot say what they are because at the moment no one knows what they are. Liz Kendall doesn't know what they are. She will. This is what annoys me. She will know what the red lines are because she can't just say to her officials, go and come with some proposals. She has to give them guidelines. Yeah. I would like to know what those guidelines are. She could have, like, you know, at least, because Rachel Reeves, I mean, you'll notice Rachel Reeves as Chancellor is setting out certain red lines to, like, investors to calm the markets down. So she's calming investors down by saying, well, if this happens, if A happens, I will do B and things like this. Yes. Whereas no one is saying that to people on benefits. And that's my issue. Yeah. But like I say, so what people have done is they've looked at the situation. The sanctions could have ended overnight, and they haven't. Yeah. Because she could have just said, obviously some sanctions may need to, you can't have people completely taking the piss, but you can just say things like, at the very least, when people turn up late for something, it's like a 3 strike. You get 3 bloody strikes when you're a kid in a classroom, for Christ's sake. So you could have something like that. At least until they could at least take the sting out of it until they can have their proper review. Yeah. And they haven't. So so all people have heard is we're going to maintain the same cuts to the benefit system that were already in the Conservative budget. People have heard that. They knew that the Conservatives intended to carry out those cuts by basically reducing the number of the size of the claims or the number of people who can claim. Yeah. And they've assumed that Labour will do the same thing. Now, it doesn't automatically follow. Labour's plan may be that they're naturally going to get people off benefits so that smaller pot of money is also going around fewer people, thus maintaining. I mean, it's never going to be a good life, let's be honest. It's not going to be a good life on benefits. It never will be. It's not intended to be. And also it's something, like, as I say, most voters... It should be. It should, but...
Universal basic income.
But most voters... Most voters are very tribal. Most voters are... The Department for Work and Pensions is the most resented government department.
Yes, I can imagine.
Even if you think about they
could allay some of the fears.
Yes, they could.
I mean, that's what Colin Sick in the chat is saying. The worry they are causing is worse. Yeah. Oh, no. It's the worry. They could just allay people's fears and say, look, we've got no... your benefits are not going to go down. That's what they could say. Your benefits are not going to go down.
No, they shouldn't do that. But what they could do, which would do the same job, is put the emphasis, because people think,
why can't they say that?
You know why they can't say it? Because people think of them as scroungers, right? So you shift the emphasis. Instead of talking about people on benefits, you talk about working people on benefits. Okay. Or you'll talk about disabled people on benefits.
Just say that those payments are not going to go down. You don't have to say they're going to go up in line with inflation. You don't have to do,
well, they will go up in line with inflation.
No bells and whistles. Just allay people's fears that they're going to stop getting their benefits or the money that's owed to them by the state.
The thing that they did say, I'm trying to think of the word that they used. What is the word for sanctions and Liz Kendall has used this word that means punishing, but it's not punishing about sanctions.
Oh, someone just said that actually. The word punitive.
Punitive, that's it. Let's see if this is it. See, it may not be in the manifesto. No, it's not in. Let me just see when she said it, though. She said it during the general election campaign. Yeah. Because I am also aware that there was a period last year when they sort of did a final shakedown of the manifesto. Let's have a look. There's something in the big issue here. This is from August, so she was actually the minister then. I'll probably have to read this.
Okay, well,
The
while you're
government will
reading
put
that, if Gary, if you're still here, we're going to try and allay some of the stress here because Gary's
well,
saying I can't listen anymore.
I
Emil,
it's
and this is
like,
too stressful.
yeah, I mean, from my point of view, like, on the one hand, I don't want to give false hope because I cannot say that what Labour announce will be a sigh of relief because I don't know what they're going to say, and it's not like I trust them implicitly. But at the same time, yeah, we've got something here, and Liz Kendall has said this since becoming a minister. The government will put a stop to blaming people who are out of employment for a soaring benefits bill the Work and Pension Secretary has pledged. Um, so, but, what's the action? What's the actual words? We're waiting. And we have to wait. She has to carry out that review. She can't just spend what she wants. She's given her money by Rachel Reeves. And, and as I say, the Department for Work and Pensions, it is resented by the public. Like every other government department, yeah, people want costs to be kept down, but they appreciate literally every other government department, not the DWP, even for pensions. Like when you talk about the fact that the winter fuel allowance policy was a big political own goal, it was a very bad political mistake. And yet, in polling, most people are actually on Labour's side with it because most people are of working age and they resent like some of their tax money going to pensioners, ironically. So literally every bit of spending in the DWP is something you have to do on the quiet. But at the same time, I see no reason why Labour cannot publicly put the emphasis on people with disabilities, who are, no one can say they're scroungers, they've got disabilities, and people in work. So if you're working, but your income is so low, you still need benefits. You're a worker. So they could put the emphasis on those people because the same thing applies to everyone else anyway.
Yeah. We've got a load of gifts coming in from everyone, so thank you very much for that. First of all, It's Neutrals, thank you very much for becoming a member, and also Andrew Dixon, really, really generous again. Thank you, Andrew, for gifting 10 politics social membership. So Colin Sick is now a member, Gunny is now a member, Toby Kirby, Bez Roth, even number 3. Oh no, number 3, Richard, you already remember. Lauren Quigley, Sandra Harris, David Lilly, Brad, and Ruskins. You are all now members, so thank you very much. Welcome new members to the Politics Social channel. And also Chris C here has gifted £5 to the Super Chat Fund. Thank you very much for that, sir. Maybe the DWP should be renamed the Ministry of Social Security. Make it sound as if it's about social support, not punitive sanctions. Well, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, well, you could argue that the name at the moment is a misnomer because it has, although most people on benefits are working, it doesn't really have a lot to do with work. It certainly doesn't help people into work.
Yeah.
And it never has. Yeah, well, I don't know. Okay, in my lifetime, when I was unemployed, I've been unemployed a couple of times. It was not pleasant. And that was during Labour's time. They did not help you find work. They were actively sometimes a barrier to finding work.
Well, there was a thing about if you got a job, you'd get less money. So what was the point?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you the thing that is in the manifesto, because I did just see it when I was trying to look through there, is it did talk about you being able to do some work without then having to restart, if it's like for a couple of days and then having to restart your whole claim again. So you don't have to do that. So you don't lose your benefits just because you do a bit of work. So that's one obvious way to encourage more people to at least pick up work where they can. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem with Labour. It might well be that this spring, when they announce it, I don't think anyone's going to be like leaping for joy. That will never happen with any announcement for anything to do with the DWP. But it might well be, well, that wasn't as bad as we were fearing. And again, their Labour will have just then caused unnecessary anguish. Yes. Just because, even though they can't say what they're going to do until they've worked it out, and they will announce it when they've worked it out. It's not like they're going to have worked it out mid-February and go, oh, well, we said we'd announce it in spring, so let's wait a bit. They will announce it when they've worked it out, when they're ready to. But they must have guidelines. And why can't they tell us what those guidelines are?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I just messed up the chat there. Put it back to normal. Yeah, trying to do other stuff while I'm doing this. I just want to just jump into the chat for a moment. Ian Wallace saying it's also the mental health issues that worry me. They force people into work, and they're not ready. It'd be damaging for the employer, and the person just end up getting sacked, which is very true. I mean, mental health is a big issue in the UK at the moment. That has been grossly underappreciated by the Tories, who have not
by anyone
done things to help people with their mental health, which is something that takes people out of
we
work.
we don't have mental health in this country, like mental health support. It amazes me when I hear there are actually psychiatrists in the NHS, because I'm thinking, well, everyone I've known who's had a serious mental health issue has never seen one. I've known lots of people, anyone will.
We got a super chat in from Kat. Thank you, Kat. I have a small heart attack every time I see a DWP envelope in my letterbox. I can appreciate that fear of just, what's it going to be? Are they going to stop?
Well, letters are never good news.
No, but I mean, if you get a letter from, I don't know, the National Lottery, you're not going to naturally assume
you
they'll
don't
take money off.
That's the point these days. Letters are always just bad news. That's always what it is. I don't get letters because I'm all right for money now. I did do.
That's helpful. Thanks, Phil.
Sorry. Housemen are evil, really.
I can completely understand that, and that's why the DUP should be set up to help
DWP. The DUP will never be set up to help people.
Like the W.
I've done that before.
Not you.
I've done that before. They never help people.
The DWP. God, it even takes too long to say. No, I absolutely agree that they should change the name. Just change it to the Ministry of Social Security. That makes sense, doesn't it?
You could do, yeah.
I mean, this is what we did with national insurance, isn't it? The idea was it was an insurance thing for the country. It didn't sound bad. It didn't sound like
it didn't
sound like an extra tax, even though it was a tax.
Yeah, when you set up, and it's a tax, actually, they should be folded into income tax. Now, even the Tories agree with that, but they didn't do it. I mean, when the NHS was being set up, it was being made clear, because like now we talk about, healthcare being free, but it's not free. We're paying for it, but we're just paying for it all the time so that when we need it, then we've got it. And when the NHS was set up, national insurance was set up as this healthcare isn't free. You're paying for it via this method, which is no longer the case if it ever was. So it was set up just as a way of saying, this is how it's being funded. You are paying for it, but it's just that you're paying for it in a manageable way so that when you need it, you don't have to worry about a medical bill. Whereas, of course, Reform UK, Rupert Lowe's been at it again. Reform UK wants you to have those medical bills that will bankrupt you if someone runs into you. It's not even your fault.
Yes.
Because Rupert Lowe has been talking about that again, as Nigel Farage has.
Lowe, the guy who said that no one will be saying that they are Remainers. No one will say that they have actually voted to stay in the EU by 2025. This is his prediction, because it would be too embarrassing to say that you didn't vote for Brexit. So anything he says can be safely ignored. Number 3 says there's fuck all support for the recently bereaved, which is very true and also very tragic at the same time. In fact, one of the things that really stuck in my head about the Tory austerity years is they ended up having to get rid of the child bereavement counselling service in Liverpool for children who had lost parents. I mean, Jesus Christ. These people have no compassion. They have just no sympathy whatsoever, because they can afford the counselling. They can afford the support. They can afford their help.
They're also less likely to die before their kids because they're rich.
So One Argue Pagan has asked a very pertinent question. Okay, so what are the genuinely good things we definitely know are going through?
Well, I mean, there's actually a lot of things, because the workers' rights bills and we just had the renters' rights bill going through to the House of Lords now. And in terms of bereavement, that has it has lots of things in it. Like the no fault evictions is one of the most headline words there. But sorry, it's because my camera, it's supposed to be that camera, but it pissed off for some reason. I've now looked at this one. The renters' rights bill had an amendment added to it. It had a few amendments, and one of them was that if you're a guarantor for someone and they die, you won't have to like stump up. So there is some bereavement type help in there at least, just as a little segue. But you've with the legislation that's going through now, there'll be much stronger rights for workers, and unions, so they will be able to operate much more easily, which also means that it's going to be easier to be able to demand higher pay. Labour are also putting pressure on at the other end by increasing public sector pay and the minimum wage above the level of inflation at the moment. You've got the housing stuff. So we're going to get much more affordable housing and social housing. I saw someone last week going, "Oh, you should build more council houses." It's councils that build council houses. There's clues in the name. But Labour are actually making sure that there's going to be more council houses built, although that's a double-edged sword. You've got, we're going to be having a massive rollout of the green technology, and Labour have already been announcing thousands of new jobs being created because of this. And this is the thing, and this is my main issue with some of the stupidity of Badenoch. Like, she's setting out various positions. She's trying to make a virtue of not saying firm policies, but she's setting herself against net zero. But the thing is, come the next election, people agree that we need to take action on climate, and yes, some people are trying to convince them that it's more expensive, it's too expensive. Yeah. But come the next election, there's going to be about 600,000 jobs dependent on it. So if the Tories say they want to dismantle it, they're basically telling 600,000 people, to say nothing of everyone else in the supply chain that will build up around them, that they're going to be sacked. So it's an absolute nonsense position. But that's another useful thing that Labour are doing. That's what you want to do. You want to bed something in, a new industry, by making people's jobs dependent on it.
Yeah.
With a lot of the things that came in the budget, we don't know exactly how it's going to be spent, because until ministers knew what money they were being given, and they still can't be absolutely certain, the ones that aren't ring fenced, they don't know. So they're still working on their plans now. But we know that there was a boost to defence and the NHS. We know that they've actually done quite a lot of work already, even though it's not been mentioned in the newspapers, in prisons. So there's been quite a few prison reforms going on. So there is a lot of stuff there. It's just not being reported, and Labour are not bothering to shout about it.
If it had been me, if I was in charge, if I ruled the world, I would be doing this on a war footing. After 14 years of Tory mismanagement, here we are 6 months after the election, and they're still investigating, discussing, deciding. I feel like this should have all been done.
So it couldn't, though, to be fair. Some of it couldn't be, and this was, again, the Tories. I mean, when we talked about them laying traps, like some traps couldn't be avoided. Rishi Sunak blocked, what's supposed to happen as you lead up to a general election? You're supposed to allow senior members of the opposition to meet with civil servants to discuss what they want to do, so that if they win,
and they didn't allow that,
did they? And they didn't allow that.
But even so, it has been 6 months. So
when you say, but they were constantly playing catch up and constantly having to deal with all the hand grenades being lobbed at them from the media.
They should explain this. If only they had some kind of YouTube channel that would explain this to people.
Well, they have, and they just don't use it as shit.
Johnny Carphead dropped £2 in the super chat for them. Thank you, Johnny. DUP and DWP both say no. Yes.
Yeah. Well, they are set, as I say, they're set up to do that. It's very unfortunate. At the end of the day, a lot of people on benefits tend not to vote in high numbers. And a lot of people who vote in high numbers and specifically swing their votes, so they go from one to the other. Literally every other government department, it's like, yeah, great. That's the one government department they'd rather didn't exist at all.
Yeah.
Until they need it. But, a lot of people at any one time don't need it.
Yeah.
Whereas something like, the Department for Health and Social Care, they appreciate, at any one time, they probably do know someone who needs it, who's close to them. And then they also appreciate that they have needed it in the past and they will again. Same with the Home Office. They want policing, they want border security. Every other government department, they understand that it does a job that improves their lives. The DWP stands alone as the department that is there, that doesn't do anything for them, as far as they're concerned.
Yeah. I'm just going to try something because I want to see if I've managed to format the chat correctly. So I'm going to gift some membership. So if you're watching and you're not a member yet, you might be now. Let's see what happens. So 5 people watching and now members. SG. Yes, it's the right size. It's the right. It hasn't gone tiny. Yes. Good. Hurrah! Look at that, Phil.
Yeah.
Fixing my CSS while I'm chatting away. So SG. Terence Murray, not another budget, Carity, and Happy Enough. Well done for becoming members, randomly picked by the algorithms. So welcome. You are now members of the chat. Your name will appear at the end of the video, and there's a free membership for a month there. Okay, so yeah, we can talk all day about what Labour should and shouldn't be doing, but I feel like we really need to be saying, like, giving people who are watching this and just people in general a little bit of, allayment of their fears, of their worst fears, because Labour aren't doing this. Labour aren't allaying fears. They're not going out there.
All I would say,
and making it.
So the only practical thing I can say, because on the one hand, I don't want people to worry unnecessarily. On the other hand, I don't want to give people false hope. So I would look at it as logically as you can. First of all, only look at what Labour have actually announced, not what they haven't announced and what some people think they might do. So speculation, forget all about it. There is no speculation because the plan, no one knows the plan. No one knows. The Minister, the Secretary of State does not know the plan. Hasn't been worked out yet.
Okay.
The other thing to do is, but the plan might not be good, right? So is there anything you can do in a practical sense to prepare for a plan that's not very good, or are you a hostage to fortune? If you're a hostage to fortune, then there's nothing you can do, in which case what you need to do is just only pay attention to what is announced and not what the Telegraph are speculating on.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the only practical thing I can think of saying.
That's actually a good point there, because the newspapers just love to stress people the fuck out. You imagine that your average Daily Mail reader who must sit there absolutely petrified of everything that's happening in the world, because it's all going to affect them. It's all going to mess their life up. I mean, they won't even be able to use the toilet when they go out now. They won't be able to buy anything because it'll be too expensive. They won't be, and there might be trans people.
Marauding gangs of trans people.
Yes. Yeah. Just waiting to F shit up. I mean, wait until they have to talk about marauding gangs of Muslim trans people. Yeah, Muslim trans people, because they're the thing. Ernie Burns says the DWP have definitely started encouraging more interaction with long-term recipients of benefits. There might not be a policy change, but there is a new emphasis.
The changes were in the works anyway. The Conservatives had already put some things in place. Until there is a different system implemented and announced, what's happening now is still basically the Conservative system, other than there were supposed to be some cuts implemented last autumn that were stopped.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone who's watching this channel at the moment has now just been made a member. Thank you so much to Captain Janeway of the best starship, the Voyager, who has gifted 10 Politics Social memberships to Kat, Narinek, Narik 00, AJ, Glam, and oh no, you're already a member, AJ. I'll put your name in. Tanjuice, Videra, Aidan Hammond, David Grinberg, Haruthi Susie Meyer, Tim Dobbits, Beer for You, and Adam Matthews. Well done. Thank you to all those people for becoming members. Well done for becoming members. And
that's what it's like being a teacher sometimes.
Just
to show you
though, Janeway,
Adam Bienkov put on Twitter earlier, he actually found an article where, as he describes it, the Telegraph finally finds some unemployed people it sympathises with. Do you want to have a guess who they were?
Were they unemployed Tory MPs by any chance?
Yeah.
Are they? That was just
Yeah.
a joke. Oh
No,
my God.
it's the headline.
What a
I've
time
earned
to be
five.
alive.
I've earned £575 in 6 months. The ex-Tory MPs who can't get a job.
Oh
Jonathan Gullis
my,
pictured in the centre.
oh my God. That is just absolutely bonkers. We have just had, oh my God, a couple of just outrageously generous chats just come in on the wire there. First of all, we've got Johnny Copperhead with what I'll call a mega chat. Thank you very much for that. £50, you get a mega chat. I keep mentioning Farage riot and Liz Truss crashed the economy. I feel I must pay a fine for my behaviour. Here you go, Graham. Thank you so much, Johnny. That is incredibly, incredibly generous of you. And Chris C, thank you very much for the super chat with £10 there. And in 1945, Labour took over a country when it was on its knees, but they set up the welfare system and the NHS and got Britain building. What's stopping them now? That's a very good question.
First of all, well,
But
no.
Phil,
At the
tell us.
time, the country was literally in ruins. People knew a tweak couldn't work. And secondly, there was money.
Would the twerk work?
No.
No?
There was money.
Don't
You don't
see
want
Keir
Keir
Starmer
Starmer doing that.
twerking?
Not
No?
at all.
No? Okay.
But it is quite interesting. I should read the byline to
alone.
this. It's quite spectacular from the Telegraph. It says, the sudden shift into unemployment after an election defeat is brutal, and so is finding work when you were a Conservative parliamentarian. Now, I was discussing, like, because Jonathan Gullis keeps going on about the fact he can't get a job. And then I invited my own viewers of my channel to come up with some jobs that he could do. But some people were saying, yeah, they should stop his benefits. And this is the thing, like, you know, they're not on benefits because they had enough money that they can be unemployed for a bit without having to go cap in hand to the DWP.
Yes.
Um,
do they get a pension? Do MPs get an ongoing pension?
I don't know that they get it
years?
as soon as they retire, but
Okay.
they do get a decent pension.
But that will be when they're 65 or something. Yeah, it won't be.
I think I don't know when it is. Like my teacher's pension is payable from 60, I think.
Doesn't
it might be
Liz
that.
Truss get like 50 grand a year
No.
from the taxpayer for just being a fucking former PM?
No, people keep. It's a bit like the expenses thing. She's allowed to draw an allowance to run an office. She's not
Yeah.
allowed to just pocket it.
I know, but
and it's
still.
actually more than that.
Can you
But
run an
yeah,
office?
she gets it.
Can you run an office? Do you get money to run an office?
Well, no, but I've not
44
been the
days
Prime
that you
Minister.
spent ruining the British economy?
No, but it is the rule. You don't have to have. I don't suppose anyone really, when they were drawing up the rule, imagined a prime minister only serving for like a few minutes. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's talk about this sudden shift into unemployment being brutal, and yet they're not having to claim benefits. How brutal can it really be?
Exactly. They can still afford the rent. Well, the mortgages.
They might own their own house.
Probably.
They might have other people still paying them rent
Probably
because they might be landlords.
Given it by daddy. Jonathan Gullis, yes, he did go to private school. Someone asked about West Streeting. No, he didn't. In fact, hardly anyone in
No
Keir
one in the
Starmer's
cabinet.
went
None
to
of them.
private school, except for Keir Starmer, who we have to give a bit of a let on because his school, which I think was Reigate, it became private while he was there.
But
Slim.
it wasn't when he joined, and he did not pay fees,
Yes,
or his parents
yeah.
did not pay fees.
But you know, that was
So
nice.
it's not.
To quote,
It's not a fee.
to quote the guy from the Fast Show, it was nice. Well, that's nice.
But yeah, so there is now, because the only member who had been privately educated in the cabinet was Louise Haigh.
Yeah, and off she went.
So now there's now zero members of the cabinet, which is a shame because he was one of my favourites. But you know, it does mean now that there are zero, which is the first time ever.
We're running out of time here, but I just wanted to touch on something before we go, which I wanted to pick your brains about. Tulip Sadiq.
Oh yeah,
she was found not to have breached the ministerial code, and yet she still resigned. Do you think that was
just
a big
because
misstep?
of media pressure.
Do you think that was a misstep of Labour though? Once things kicked off in Bangladesh, the Prime Minister, who was related to stepped down, and obviously there was going to be some kind of criminal investigation because that's what happens in countries when they get rid of their former politicians. Do you think it was a mistake of Starmer to say he was going to stand by her and then she resigned?
Well, no, because she hasn't done it. It's not wrong to stand by her because she hasn't done anything wrong, but it's also right that when the heat rises to a certain level, you have to resign. Because at the end of it, I mean, she was a junior minister at the end of the day, and also It's not. It's just going to attract negative headlines.
She was the
And
city
Labour
minister,
are
wasn't
trying.
she? But then
Yeah.
part of her portfolio was corruption. She was an anti-corruption.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So it was right that she had to resign in the end,
Yeah.
even though she has done nothing wrong at all. But you can't, like, your only option, if you're going to sort of keep her there, is to say, oh yeah, but that's because the Bangladeshi government's as corrupt as hell now. You can't obviously say that.
No.
So you can't talk about political witch hunts
Yeah.
and be credible. So yeah, she just had to resign. Well, it was fine to begin with because it's like, because these are the scandals. I mean, look at the scandals so far. We've had two ministerial scandals. One, because it turns out the cabinet minister got mugged and didn't deal with it as well as she might. And the other one, because someone's auntie may or may not have been a bit naughty.
Well,
Not the minister herself.
when you mentioned
maybe her auntie.
when you mentioned, was it Louise Haig who left because of
Yeah.
she got mugged, and then in her report she thought she'd lost her phone and a work phone, which
Well, she says that. We don't know.
I mean, if that's the case, I really don't like. I don't know why she resigned. And the Tories are trying to make mileage out of this. They mentioned it in Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday. They said she had to resign because of fraud.
Yeah, but Starmer turned that right back on her. At the end of the day, the Tories are the party who, I mean, he brought up Priti Patel, who's sat right next to, well, maybe not right next to her, but she is the Shadow Foreign Secretary now. So, yeah, Starmer brought up the fact that Priti Patel was found to have, have bullied staff and kept in place. So Priti Patel was kept in place.
Yeah.
So anything like this that the Tories try and use, Starmer can fire straight back. But he only can do that if Labour are effectively whiter than white. So we are going to we've already had two, what you would look at on the face of it as, these are like Louise Haig and Tulip Siddiq would never have resigned had they been Conservative ministers in a Conservative government under the same conditions.
No.
Would never have
Come on,
resigned. The media
Priti
wouldn't have made
Patel
a deal
was
out of
found.
it.
It was funny because if you watch back my PMQ's watch party, I actually say, while she's saying that about Louise Haig, I was saying, oh, that's interesting because you're the party that, Priti Patel literally breached the ministerial code, and yet it was the person who did the report who had to resign and not her. And then Keir Starmer stood up and said exactly the same thing. And I was like, can he hear me? Can he?
Well, it's such an obvious thing to say. Like, Kemi Badenoch is absolutely appalling. She granted she doesn't have many useful lines of attack against Labour, but she's like coming up with ones where it's really easy to fire them straight back at her.
Yeah. She'd make a terrible tennis player. In the super chat, we've got Anthony Fisher. Thank you very much for the super chat, Anthony Fisher. Sam Coates of Sky News went to King's College School in Wimbledon, which is a private school, another name for the list. So that will make Sam Coates the 1,202nd household name on my private school mafia list. That's just phenomenal, isn't it? Phenomenal. Could you make a list 13 times longer than that of all the kids who went to state school who have managed to get themselves into the public eye in this country?
There wouldn't be very many. Like in football, maybe footballers, athletes, particularly footballers, but athletes.
But it would be working class sports. It wouldn't be the equestrians. It wouldn't be the people who
they're not really household
fancy
names
bikes.
anyway.
It wouldn't be the people who do the sailing, the yacht things.
No one knows who they are. It's fine.
I know, but they win the gold medals in the Olympics.
Yeah, but no one knows who they are. But in sports stars, that'd be about it. I can't. Even actors. A lot of actors go to private school.
Yeah, almost all of them. Gary Oldman, he didn't. We like him.
I mean, ironically, another one from a name from this week, Tony Slattery, was state educated.
He was.
Although he did go to Oxford, didn't he? He was in the footlights with Stephen Fry, but he was state educated.
And he was fantastic. I mean, I grew up watching him on Whose Line Is It Anyway? And he appeared on everything.
I only watched that a few times.
There was a period in the mid-90s where he was on every panel show. He was on Red Dwarf. I think he's in season 2.
He was in Up and Under. That's an underrated film. I like that.
Up and Under. I've not seen that.
Yeah, I watched it at the cinema. It was like on a television screen. It was pointless. But then you don't need to. There's nothing cinematic about it. It's just like a television type film anyway.
What
But I'd like, yeah, it's quite good.
me and the
It's a
missus watched.
rugby film.
We watched Baby Girl last night. This is a new Nicole Kidman movie. I'll talk about this in the show later for social because it's not really appropriate for the agenda. But just a word of warning: it's shite. So if you're thinking of going to see it at the cinema, please don't. There you go. Because do you know why it's shite? Because there's none of the characters in it are likable. That's it.
Isn't that like a Quentin Tarantino movie then?
No. Oh, come on. You didn't like. I mean, you must have liked Bruce Willis's character in Pulp Fiction and
Oh,
Samuel
I
L.
like
Jackson
I,
and
I
John
like
Travolta
quite.
with that back and
No, they're
forth.
all
It's brilliant.
awful.
You
They're
warmed
all
to them
awful.
straight away.
The films, I think, I've
Dead, baby.
several of
That's dead.
Tarantino's films I think are good, but I don't think any of the characters. Like the closest I would say is maybe in Django Unchained. There's the main characters there, okay, but
Yeah,
but
but
most of his
Django's
films,
not. But his German friend, Christoph Waltz, he's brilliant. He is very likable. You
yeah,
warm to him.
but
You don't want him to die.
generally speaking, in
what
his films, all of the characters are arseholes.
Yeah.
So
Number 3 is just joking to the chat. How do Tories have sex? They screw each other. That's very true. But yes. Anyway, so Super Tiny 808 says, "Yay, it's a top team, Phil and Gray." Thank you very much, Super Tiny, for that. But we're going. We've got to get out of here. Phil's got things to do. People to eat. People to meet. But yeah. So you got anything planned at the weekend, Phil? You gallivanting?
unfortunately, yes, I have to keep getting up at 6:30 in the morning to walk the dogs because we're having the garden done after obviously the extension was built.
Okay.
And because it's been a bit cold
Has
with
been
it
a bit
being
cold.
winter and everything, so there's been like about a day lost this week, so it's not quite finished.
Yeah.
So we're still having to get, because we can't let them out in the garden until it's sort of done. So I'm having to walk them 3 times a day, but like 6:30. I don't like the 6:30 in the morning. Like when I was going to be a full-time YouTuber, I thought I'd be like Harry Belafonte, like sleep all day and work all night. It has not worked out like that.
Well, you got dogs and responsibilities. Damn those responsibilities. It's the best thing about being a kid. This is why people look back to their childhood with fondness, no matter how fucked up and shit their childhood was. They'll always look back on it with fondness in some ways because they had no responsibilities. It's the shittest thing about being a grown up.
You can, well, I don't know. I mean, I still don't. It's only those responsibilities. In all other regards, I can do what I like when I like. I don't have to follow a schedule like from a normal workplace. So I still have that. I'm not complaining.
We've got Ernie Burns in the chat saying Kemi Badnoch gives off such head girl vibes, performative superiority and self-righteousness.
I'm
She
being
reminds
corrected
me
about
in a
footlights as
way
well.
of Joe Thingy, who was the leader of the Lib Dems into the 2019 election.
Swinson.
Joe Swinson.
She was mental.
Liz Truss is a bit like that as well. Head girl vibes. Maybe that's slightly sexist. I don't know. But I didn't really get head girl vibes from Theresa May, so I don't think it's any woman who's in charge. But yeah, maybe Theresa May was more of a school mistress, head mistress of like an all-girls school back in the 1950s. Gallifreyan Ren saying, "I'm not feeling at all uplifted. They might be helping workers' rights and social housing, but Labour are still being cruel to the vulnerable for cruelty's sake. They were meant to be better." I don't really know what to say to that because I don't disagree with you. I think that
until they've
restricting-
announced something that you can get your teeth into, then I mean, it's one of those things you can't actually.
Well, they have. They've
say
announced a
otherwise.
ban on puberty blockers, and people can't get.
Well, yeah,
Trans people can't get HRT now. They're getting turned down for HRT, and which will kill them. Like if they don't take the hormone replacement, like it can really fuck them up, and they're being denied it for being trans. The cis people can get it. Same with puberty blockers.
Yeah.
Cis people can get it. So that seems to me
Yeah, I
like
know,
performative
everything.
cruelty. But Labour are not even performing this. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of happening.
No.
It's-
it's not performative cruelty. There's no strategic advantage, and they don't believe the strategic advantage. This is
So
Wes
why
Streeting
are they
getting something
doing
badly
it?
wrong. He's just getting it wrong.
Is he an idiot? Is he an idiot?
He's an idiot.
Okay, does he need to go?
When it comes to
Because I think he needs to go.
this, really, someone should have. I don't understand how he's got the wrong people around him. He's not going to go. It doesn't matter whether he should or he shouldn't. I mean, he'd be perfectly capable of minister. Maybe he should have just swapped to your mate Johnny. You know, maybe he should have just been like the business secretary. Maybe he'd have been fine with that.
Yeah, they couldn't find a
Because
minority
he's
to
in, you know,
oppress in
he
business.
knows his stuff. He's on top of his game. Like, you know, in like when he's on Question Time or in an interview,
Yeah.
he doesn't get one pulled over on him. You know, so he's got all the facts at his fingertips and he knows how to respond. So he's a perfectly good cabinet minister, just maybe not for health. And
Super
I
Tiny
remember,
says, yes, we all hate streeting, so
I hate's a strong word. I don't think he's being deliberately cruel. We've had plenty of health
I
ministers.
do
who
not
have.
think at this moment he is an asset for the Labour Party. He's not bringing across anyone from the other side, and he's letting down a lot of people on our side. So
Well,
I think he's a disaster all round. That's just
but
my opinion.
as health secretary, I think he just would have been better in a different position.
Yeah,
he
but he is health secretary, and he's
yeah.
already made a complete arse of it. So I hope he gets replaced at some point. So write to your MP and tell them to replace West Streeting. Not that your MP can do that, but you know they get enough letters.
And it's really spectacularly not going to happen. But you can do it. But it's not.
Should we set up a honey trap? Come on, old-fashioned honey trap.
No.
I'll go down to London, seduce him. What do you reckon? Put on my dancing shoes. Hey, Wes, do you want to come back with me? And then we'll have like people hiding to take pictures.
I don't think
Front cover of all the
manufacturing.
tabloids.
I don't think manufacturing a scandal with the government is helpful.
Plot one though.
There's plenty of other people trying it.
Yeah. Anyway, Gallifreyan Wren, I disagree. He's been made aware of the cost of his decisions. Streeting knows what he has wrought, says Gallifreyan Wren. And Ernie says it's pandering to right-wing media talking points, the amplified voices of the aggrieved.
See, again, I struggle to believe that simply because I can believe it of some things. Mm-hmm. I can believe it, for example, on the asylum issue. Like we could shut off the small boats issue overnight by setting up some safe routes, at least in northern France. But they're not going to do that. No. So that is pandering. But this doesn't make sense because there are not enough. It's not getting them any votes. It's not losing them any appreciable votes. There's no point pretending otherwise. But it's not impacting the next election. It didn't impact the last election. It's not impacting the next one. So it can't possibly be pandering, because pandering is always about votes.
Yeah,
you know, when you use the word pandering, this isn't about votes.
I think in particular case of West Streeting, he's fucking up all over because they're losing support for Labour. People who lent their support to Labour in the last election gave them the benefit of the doubt, and now he's giving them more than enough reason to doubt that benefit of the doubt was a good idea at the time. But we've got to get going now because we've gone 13 minutes over time. But then,
I mean, the thing is as well, like it won't be the other way either. If he thought, or if anyone thought that it was going to even hurt Labour's vote, where would it hurt it most? In West Streeting's constituency, where he only just won anyway. So it's just one of those things. It's got nothing to him. It's got nothing to do. It's got nothing to do with votes. He believes it. He's listened to someone.
Yeah, he's transphobic.
What he said is scientific. I don't even know that. I mean, maybe.
This is interesting because Phil in the chat just put Streeting is transphobic, and I had to approve that to show up on the screen.
It's
Google there.
He's
censoring.
I think he's been led to believe it's the right decision, but the way he phrased it was so scientifically inept. I'd be embarrassed if one of my students had said that.
There was not many, but there were a few people I met who were like Labour supporters, who donors and things like that to Labour, who may have his ear, who were very transphobic when I met them.
No.
We had a slightly blazing row. Which is maybe one of the reasons why I never got any funding for Labour Social often. I don't know. Who knows? But I stuck to my guns anyway. So, there's that. I've got that. I've got me honour. I've got me honour, everyone. Yay! Got no money, but I got me honour. But anyway, look, thank you so much for the super chats. Thank you for the chat. Thank you so much to Phil Moorhouse for coming over from a different bias to go and speak to us this afternoon. And I hope you have a good weekend, mate. We'll be back tonight. I'll be back tonight at 9:30 for the Friday Night Social. Please join us for that. Should be a hoot. I'm going to add some more names to the credits now of the show. So here they are. Enjoy. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.